You see, if you wish to understand the significance of spiritual perception, the best way to do so is by engaging with an explanation arising from spiritual research of the first stage of supersensible knowledge, that of imagination. Let me describe a few characteristics of this. A memory, you see, exists from the present perspective. We do not re-experience what we experienced 10 years ago when we remember it, but only have an image of what we experienced, one that is therefore fairly shadowy and abstract. By seriously undertaking the exercises I describe entitled Knowledge of the Higher Worlds, to acquire the capacity of imagination, it gradually becomes possible not just to live in the present, but to overcome the shadowy nature of memory and to live also in one's past memories. Thus, in 1922, it is possible to re-experience things that happened in 1911 in the same vivid way as one originally experienced them. If you make special efforts to live in thoughts, and I do not mean living in abstractions, but in something fully tangible, which allows you to grasp how living in thoughts brings with it moments of destiny and all kinds of experience. Besides your ordinary experience of your spatial body, you will also come to an experience of your temporal body. Picture what you felt when you lost a dearly loved person, say 13 years ago, and how pale this pain now is compared to the reality you felt at the time. But if you acquire the capacity for imaginative perception through the exercises described in Knowledge of the Higher Worlds, then you will live simultaneously with equal vigor in every part of your temporal body, in the same way that you ordinarily live in every part of your spatial body. Then at 50 or 60 or even 80, you do not just look back 5 years, but since present existence extends across the whole of one's life, you are immediately present in every moment of your life. This immediacy and presence, however, is bought at the cost of its fugitive, fleeting character. If you are able to experience with this vividness something that occurred when you were 18, it won't fade quite as rapidly as a dream, but you cannot hold fast to it. You have to forget it again. And as a spiritual researcher, if one found no other aid or remedy, this would place you in a very difficult situation. You would be able to create the connections by means of which you can discern things in the etheric world, but you would immediately forget them again. One excellent remedy for the problem is to write down what has been experienced while it is still vivid, an activity that does not pass through the head, therefore, but through the writing hand. I do not mean mediumistic writing, nor writing with the aim of recording and preserving the experience. Recording things in this way, even writing down the content of a lecture afterward, is actually something extremely unattractive from a spiritual perspective. But it is an aid to fixing something otherwise very fleeting by getting the whole organism to participate in it in a way we otherwise only do in drawing or painting. Then it remains in your organism, and there is no further need to appropriate it again afterward. It is just a question of fixing things. You have to fix them through something that involves your whole being, and writing down what you experience is one such means. But be clear that you are not involved here in any kind of intellectual activity. The only thing that counts is the flow of writing itself. Or you can also make a symbolic drawing, painting, or such like. You can see from this the intimate connection between the whole human being and the capacity to convey in ordinary ideas what one perceives in the world of spirit. Having, in quotes, translated such perceptions, one can convey them to others who do not have spiritual perceptions, but who grasp them through these same ideas with their healthy human reason. They then possess the same ideas as the clairvoyant presents to them. To discern and discover spiritual scientific truths, a clairvoyant art is needed. But to live with these truths, one does not need it. One need only bring healthy powers of insight and understanding to bear on what is communicated. It is difficult to make this clear because most people think in words, but the clairvoyant thinks wordlessly and must then pour what is a wordless experience into the fixed language. He must adjust to the formal conditions of language. He need not experience this as coercion, for he reaches behind where the mystery of language creation exists. He can make himself understood by stripping away the common intellectual aspect of language. That is why it is so important to grasp that how the clairvoyant speaks is more important than what he says. What he says is determined by the conception that everyone brings in from the outside. It is necessary, if he is not to be considered a fool, that what he says be clothed in feasible sentences and conceptual associations. For the highest realms of spirit, how the clairvoyant says something is important. We gain a proper understanding of this if we note the how, if we note how the clairvoyant is careful to say some things briefly, others more broadly, and still others not at all. That he must formulate a sentence from one side and then another from the other side. The structural aspect is important to the higher parts of the spiritual world. That is why it is less important for comprehension to listen to the mere content, which is of course also important as revelation from the spiritual world, than it is to penetrate through the content to the manner in which the content is expressed, and so to see whether the speaker is merely coupling sentences and theories, or whether he speaks from experience. Speaking from the spiritual world becomes visible in the how of what is said, not so much in the content insofar as it is of a theoretical character, but rather in how it is expressed. It is possible, in the case of such communications out of the forms of language, for the artistic element of speech to work into what inspires the seer to raise himself up to the process of speech creation in such a way that he recreates something of what was present when speech arose out of the human organism. Naturally, artistic creativity is conscious, but the impulses, the drive, must remain in the unconscious, so that artistic creativity is free from bias. Our ordinary consciousness tends, on one side, toward observing nature. But what it delivers is the result of our concepts, which do not penetrate into the realm of space where matter haunts, so says Dubois-Reymond. The human being does not come to the totality of the world either through seeing into nature or through seeing into the soul. An abyss is there which usually cannot be bridged. It is consciously bridged in clairvoyant consciousness, in artistic creativity. Then self-knowledge must become something different from what is usually designated as such. Mystical insight finds that it is accomplished enough when it says, "Within me I have experienced God, my higher self." But true self-knowledge wants to perceive how what we otherwise experience only as the point of the I lives creatively in the organism. In that we have ideas and perceptions, we are not just conceiving and perceiving beings, but we also breathe in and out continually. While we stand in the world in waking consciousness, we always breathe in and out. But ordinary consciousness does not perceive what is happening in us. Something wonderful happens there, which can only be recognized through clairvoyant consciousness. When we do not look only at the nebulous I, but how this I lives, shaping concrete reality, then the following becomes apparent. What we are spiritually in our ether body does not live in space but in time. What is creative in music is to lift up into outer conscious form what the musician learns to experience as music in his soul life. Tone lives in it, the subconscious living flow of music within which the human soul weaves. The soul steps into existence by learning to play the instrument of the physical body. The musical life takes place between the spinal canal and the brain, this vibration of the cerebrospinal fluid through the process of breathing. What takes place there in the alternating relationship between nerves and senses? When the vibration of the nerve strikes the outer senses, mind you, not yet the sense perception, then what lives unconsciously and gets drowned by the perception is poetry. Between the senses and the nervous system, there is a region in which the human being unconsciously writes poetry. The nerve vibration rolls into his senses. It runs its course unconsciously, which can be determined physiologically. This life runs its course in the senses and is the production of poetry. The human being lives in the inner creation of poetry, and poetic creativity is the raising up of this unconscious life. Clairvoyance makes conscious what lives in artistic creativity. Then it can observe how what otherwise remains subconscious is crystallized in artistic form. We live in an age in which, through the historical necessity of human evolution, the soul is pushed to make conscious what used to be present in subconscious naivete. We can understand it as a fact of the present times that a bridge between art and clairvoyance must be built, and that new light will thus be shed on art, and through art new warmth will be given to clairvoyance. In ancient times, people were naturally endowed with clairvoyant faculties on earth. In other words, they had a connection with worlds of spirit simply by virtue of natural powers, and this was reconfigured in them so that they could take it with them again through death, as long as their knowledge of the spirit did not cease. In our modern era, this knowledge must not cease either. We must acquire it while here on earth in the ongoing stream of our existence. Once your life on earth is ended, if you knew nothing at all of the spirit while you were alive, this is precisely the same for spiritual life as plucking out your eyes would be for your power of physical vision. What you learn on the earth as knowledge about the life of spirit belongs to you. It is the eye, EYE, with which you later see between death and a new birth. But if you remain in the dark, in quotes, on earth, in relation to knowledge of the life of spirit, you will be blind to it after death, and then between death and rebirth it will be like passing through a valley of darkness. You have to develop your eyes for the world of spirit through what you acquire here on earth. And by negating or excluding any knowledge of it, you are actually plucking them out. Humanity has to become fully aware of this. Now that an ancient instinctive clairvoyance has faded altogether, humankind must realize that organs to perceive the spirit must again be developed by efforts such as those undertaken in the anthroposophic movement. You can't wait until death. It is not true to say that no efforts are needed to understand spiritual worlds, because you will find out what the world of spirit is like after death. Certainly you'll see something, but for the soul it will be like dwelling in a dark dungeon. If in this life, between birth and death, we have not developed an eye for life in the spiritual worlds, EYE. The dogma that there is no need to concern oneself with supersensible existence during life on earth is wholly misguided. In fact, we live in an era when we must try to meet our true supersensible obligations to the cosmos. And this is something we only do if we acknowledge that between birth and death we must acquire an eye, EYE, for the spirit. Then after death, things will not be shrouded in darkness for us, and we can experience the light that will then be around us. Some time ago, when I was here, I spoke of our relationship with the spiritual world. and ended by saying this: "In our era, we have reached the point where it is necessary for a core of people to form who recognize the need for spiritual scientific insight and knowledge." What I have said today doubly confirms this. We live in an age when the world of spirit wishes to show itself to us during our life on earth. We must not close the doors and windows through which it can enter. We must draw back the curtains and let in the light of the world of spirit, for the sake of life on earth itself. We must let it shine in for the sake of the life we live between death and a new birth. We must hearken to the voices that speak spiritually to us from the world of spirit, and must say, quote, "It is time for us to perceive the light of the Spirit and hearken to the voice of the Spirit," close quote. That the time has come to perceive the light of the Spirit, to hear the voice of the Spirit, and to understand it. If we work to recognize the spiritual world, to imagine the spiritual world, to take it up into thinking, into feeling, into perception, and into willing, out of a knowledge that addresses it directly as spiritual science does, then there will be fertile ground for an art that combines, so to speak, what comes from pre-birth with what comes after death. Let us therefore consider eurythmy. The human body itself is brought into movement. What is brought into movement? We bring the human organism into movement so that the limbs move. The extremities are what mainly continue to live in the following earth life, which points toward the future, the after death. But how then do we form what we present as movement of the limbs in eurythmy? We study in a sensory, suprasensory manner how, out of the head, through intellectual capacities, and through the tendencies of feeling in the chest, the larynx and the entire speech organ has been formed out of the previous life. We connect pre-birth existence directly with after-death existence. We take, so to speak, from earthly life only that which is physical material, namely the human being himself, who is the tool, the instrument for eurythmy. In eurythmy we furnish a form and movement of the human organism, such that it is the immediate outer proof of the human being's presence in the suprasensory world. When we let the human being do eurythmy, we connect him directly to the suprasensory world. Wherever art is shaped out of a truly artistic attitude, it is the witness for the connection between the human being and the suprasensory world. And when the human being of the present day is called upon to take the gods into his own soul forces, so to speak, so that he does not merely wait devoutly for the gods to bring him this or that, but instead wants to act as if the gods lived in his active will, then the moment has come, if human beings want to experience it, in which the human being must proceed from the objectively shaped arts to an art which will take on quite different dimensions and forms in the future, to an art that represents the suprasensory directly. How can it be any other way? Spiritual science also wants to represent the suprasensory directly, so it must, in a manner of speaking, also create such an art out of itself. I believe that in a certain way we would have to come to a halt in the arts if we were to attempt, in what yet remains a stammer, to speak about the arts and about what is artistic. I believe that not only are there more external things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in philosophy, as it is usually practiced, but that in the inner human being lies what brings about the liberation, at first within the artistic element, in the direction of the two poles, by entering into relationships with the physical bodily. And I believe that we cannot understand art psychologically by seeking to grasp it with the normal soul nature, but that we can grasp it only in the higher spiritual soul nature of the human being, which extends beyond the normal soul nature. It is inclined towards suprasensory worlds. And if we look at two such eminent artistic natures as Novalis and Goethe, then the secrets of the psychology of the arts are revealed to us phenomenologically, as I do believe they are, from out of reality. Schiller once experienced this with special depth when, in reference to Goethe, he said, quote, "Only through the dawn of beauty do you press on into the land of knowledge." Close quote. In other words, only through living artistically into the full human soul do you struggle upward into the regions of the sphere toward which knowledge strives. There is a beautiful phrase, I believe it is an artist's phrase, quote, "Create, artist, do not speak," close quote. And yet it is a phrase against which we must sin, because the human being is, after all, a speaking being. But as true as it is that we must sin when using such a phrase, quote, "Create, artist, do not speak," close quote, so it is equally true, I believe, that we always have to atone for such a sin, that we must always try, when talking about the arts, to create in speaking. Create, artist, do not speak. And if, as a human being, you are required to speak about the arts, then try to speak creatively, to create in your speaking. The end of the last lecture, 12.8, and that is the end of the book, Art and Theory of Art, Foundations of a New Aesthetics, by Rudolf Steiner, Collected Works, Volume 271.